Hello artists and welcome to day 60 of the epic journey. I'm DaleneFM and today we're going to be talking about the difference between glazing and scumbling. Now this is not a lesson as much as what it is just to identify the difference between the two. It's a very quick little video. At the end of it I will explain to you what the plan is for the next week and why I've been going through the few lessons that I have been going through this week and how we're going to be using that in next week's lessons. Right, artists, simply I'm going to be describing the difference between glazing and scumbling. On your left you will see an example of glazing and on your right you will see an example of scumbling. Now the major difference between the two is that glazing is the application of very thin films of colour that are quite oily. You would coat your canvas with a little bit of linseed oil first or safflower oil, and then you would come in with a little bit of oily colour, tiny little bit of pigment in a bit of oil to make it quite a weak solution of paint, and you put thin delicate glaze layers one on top of the other, building them slowly until you get to the colour that you want. On the right over there is scumbling. Now scumbling is done with opaque colours. In this case I'm just using a white to demo for you, and it's working with dry paint. If you're going to be using white, then go for something that is a dry white like titanium, or if you're going to use one of the other whites like the soft mixing white maybe, or the zinc white, or one of those softer whites, then just put it on a piece of cotton towel or kitchen towel to absorb most of the oil out of it, because it's a bit like dry brushing. You want a dry film of paint on top of your already dry layer. So that is the basic difference. Glazing is thin oily film of color, and scumbling is light but opaque film of light color. As you can see, the glazing on the left, I'm adding small little bits of rouge, if you want to call it that, to the part of the cheek and the top of the lip and the corner of the mouth, as I'm pointing out there now. And you'll be able to see the difference between that and the areas on her forehead and temple that don't have the second or the subsequent layer of glaze on them. Now on the right, on the scumbling, I'm just doing it on a bit of dark canvas there so you can see what I'm doing. You're just lightly brushing dry paint onto the surface so that the tooth of the canvas just picks it up. Artists, thank you so much for joining me on this glazing and scumbling tutorial. We just talked about the difference between the two. It wasn't actually a tutorial. But the reason I wanted to tell you the difference between the two is I want to cast your mind back to some videos ago when we were talking about glazing, and I did say to you that I was going to do a glazing tutorial. Unfortunately, however, to do a glazing tutorial is going to take some time, and of course every other day one has to skip because you're waiting for your paint to dry, because you have to paint and then wait to dry and then paint, and so it goes. What I did last week is I concentrated on some graphite techniques, because my plan for next week is to actually do a glaze painting, and then on the in-between days while I'm waiting for the glaze painting to dry, I'm going to do a graphite portrait. So you might find for a couple of days I'm concentrating on the glaze portrait, and then I'll do a graphite portrait, back to glaze, back to graphite, back to glaze, and I'll back to glaze, sorry, and I'll do that for a couple of days, and the in-between days will be while I'm waiting for the glaze to dry. So next week is going to be all about glazing and graphite, and taking into account all the lessons that we've been learning last week and some time before about these two different ways of doing a portrait and putting them into practice. So stick with me for next week. It's going to be great fun. I'm going to thoroughly enjoy it, and I'm hoping you will too. And if you do, please don't forget to like and share and subscribe to the YouTube channel. In the meantime, I will see you in day 61. Thank you for joining me. Bye. That's what you want to do.